when the city wouldn't stop moving. Strasbourg's summer of unwanted dance. The dancing mania that seized Strasbourg. Picture a hot summer day in 1518. The kind of heat that makes stone streets sweat and the air feel thick enough to chew. Now picture a woman stepping into a narrow Strasbourg lane, apron tied, hair pinned, face drawn with fatigue, and then she starts to dance. Not a jaunty little jig, not a "look at me, I'm in a good mood" spin. This is something else. Rigid, urgent, almost mechanical. She dances as if an invisible musician has trapped her in a tune only she can hear. People stare. Someone laughs nervously. Someone else makes the sign of the cross. And here's the unnerving part. She doesn't stop. Minutes turn into hours. Feet slap the dust. Her breathing turns ragged, and still she moves. You're already asking the right question. Why doesn't anyone simply grab her and pull her inside? Because in Strasbourg that summer, the dancing doesn't stay one woman's problem. It spreads, like a rumor, like smoke, like a fever. And by the end, the city will do something so bizarre, so counterintuitive, you'll wonder if the entire town has lost its mind. To understand why this happens here, why Strasbourg becomes the stage for one of history's strangest episodes, you have to step into the world these people live in. Strasbourg, in 1518, is a prosperous city in the Holy Roman Empire, busy with trade and craft guilds. But prosperity doesn't mean comfort. Grain prices rise, hunger stalks the poor. Disease is a familiar visitor, plague, sweating sickness, fevers that arrive like thieves. And over all of it hangs a powerful, invisible architecture: belief. Saints are not distant decorations, they are active forces. Curses feel as real as storms. The body is not just flesh, it's a battleground where sin, spirits, and divine punishment might announce themselves. It's also summer, and heat changes people. It frays tempers, spoils food, and makes sleep thin and restless. Imagine trying to work, pray, parent, and survive while your stomach is half empty and your world is full of warnings. In that kind of pressure cooker, a strange public spectacle doesn't just entertain, it threatens. Because if one person can lose control of their own limbs in broad daylight, who's to say the same won't happen to you tomorrow? Now let's meet the cast. Because this story isn't just about dancers. It's about a whole community trying to explain the unexplainable. First, the woman at the center of the spark. Later accounts call her Frau Trophäa. Whether that's her real name or history's convenient label, she represents something vivid. A person so overwhelmed, so seized, that her body becomes a message no one can translate. Then there are the townspeople, apprentices, washerwomen, stonemasons, widows. They don't have the luxury of psychological theories. They have lived experience, hunger, grief, prayer, and fear. Next come the authorities, city councilors responsible for order. They are practical men until practicality fails. And hovering nearby are the clergy and physicians. The clergy see spiritual danger. The physicians, trained in humoral medicine, talk about hot blood and imbalances. Ideas that sound strange now, but in their world are cutting-edge explanations. Here's the key. Everybody is trying to help, but everyone is also terrified of being wrong. Because if this dancing is a curse, then stopping it the wrong way could make it worse. So the city watches, debates, and hesitates, while the feet keep moving. Back in the street, the catalyst is both simple and horrifying. The first dancer cannot stop. She dances through the day. She dances into the evening, when shadows stretch long and neighbors peer from doorways. She dances when her feet swell and her calves tremble. She dances when her face turns pale with exertion. And then, because Strasbourg is a city where people live close, watch closely, and talk constantly, others begin to join. At first, it's a handful. A man steps in as if compelled, jaw clenched, eyes wide, with a mix of fear and surrender. A young woman starts rocking, then spinning, then stamping in frantic rhythm. It's not coordinated like a festival. It's not pretty. It looks like panic given legs. People ask, is it contagious? Is it staged? Are they possessed? The dancers themselves reportedly beg for relief, but their bodies won't cooperate. The city's anxiety becomes its own fuel. Crowds gather. The dancers see the crowd sees the dancers. And Strasbourg begins to feel like a theatre where the performance is involuntary and the ticket price might be your own self-control. In a world primed for omens, this looks like one. Days pass, and the unbelievable becomes routine, if routine can include people dancing until they collapse. The numbers grow. Accounts vary because sources from this period can be slippery, but the narrative is consistent. More and more people are caught up. Imagine walking to the well and seeing a cluster of neighbors convulsing into steps they didn't choose. Imagine trying to sleep while outside feet scuff and bodies gasp. And now the city must decide what this is. Physicians offer a diagnosis: overheated blood, too much summer heat, too much stress, too much inner pressure. Their recommendation, and this is where the story takes a turn towards the surreal, is not restraint, but release. If the dancers need to dance it out, then let them. So authorities do something astonishing. They create space for it. They arrange platforms, stages. They hire musicians. Can you imagine the logic? People are dancing themselves to ruin. Quick, bring the drums. Yet in their framework, it makes a grim sense. Give the sickness a controlled outlet. But the effect is eerie. Music doesn't calm the dancers, it validates the dance. It turns a crisis into an event. And as any human crowd will tell you, an event attracts more bodies. Strasbourg is now feeding the fire it fears. Now we reach the peak, the moment where the story stops being merely strange and becomes genuinely terrifying. Because bodies have limits. Picture a dancer in the heat, lips cracked, sweat darkening their clothes. Their movements become sloppy, then desperate. Knees buckle, they fall hard onto the boards. Someone drags them aside, and for a moment you think, thank God, it's over. But then another dancer collapses, and another. Contemporary descriptions speak of people dancing for days, some suffering strokes or heart failure, some dying of sheer exhaustion. We have to be careful. Numbers and precise causes are debated by historians, but the fear in the reports feels real. This is not a harmless trance. This is a public unraveling. And what do the onlookers do? They gasp, they pray, they argue. Some are horrified, some are fascinated. Some are surely thinking a terrible thought. What if the dancing chooses me next? The musicians hired to help are now playing to a scene that looks less like celebration and more like a battlefield without weapons. In that moment, Strasbourg confronts something chilling. The human body can become a prison, and the mind, whatever force normally holds the keys, can simply let go. And then the twist. The city pivots. When it becomes obvious that more dancing is not curing anything, the authorities reverse course. Music is banned. Stages are dismantled. The spectacle, once encouraged, is now treated like a contagion that must be quarantined. So where do you put a dancing crisis when you can't allow dancing in the streets? You send the dancers away. Accounts describe people being taken to a shrine associated with St. Vitus, a figure often linked in later tradition with involuntary movement disorders. Imagine the journey. Carts rolling over rutted roads. Inside them, men and women twitching, stamping, jerking, still compelled, still trapped. At the shrine, the response is ritual. Prayers, blessings, perhaps holy water, perhaps symbolic actions meant to lift a curse. Here's what's haunting. The solution is not purely medical or purely spiritual, but a blend. Because Strasbourg's people are not choosing between science and faith, they are throwing everything they have at the mystery. And slowly, the reports suggest, the dancing begins to subside. Not with a clean ending, more like a fever-breaking, sweat-soaked, bewildering, leaving everyone weak and shaken, asking what exactly they just survived. After the worst passes, Strasbourg exhales. But it's the exhausted kind of relief you feel after a storm that almost tore the roof off. People look at each other differently now. That neighbour who danced until their shoes split, they're no longer just Hans the baker or Elsa who sells herbs. They're evidence that something can hijack a person in front of your eyes. The council has to restore order and, frankly, save face. The physicians have to explain why their confident theory produced such disastrous advice. The clergy has to interpret what it means without igniting further panic. And the dancers, if they recover, must return to daily life carrying a strange social burden. Were they cursed, weak, chosen, faking? Imagine the gossip. Imagine the shame. Imagine the lingering pain in the legs, the bruises, the memory of not being able to stop. Even the city itself feels different. Streets that hosted frantic movement now seem too quiet. Music, once innocent, might sound suspicious. A drumbeat could make someone flinch. Most chilling of all is the question no one can answer. Did it end because the shrine worked? Because fear cooled? Because bodies finally gave out? or because the city stopped watching. When a community survives something inexplicable, it doesn't move on. It stores it. The ripple effect of Strasbourg's dancing summer isn't just the story, it's the debate it ignites for centuries. What was it? Some modern historians point to mass psychogenic illness, what used to be called mass hysteria, where extreme stress and shared belief can produce real physical symptoms across a group. And remember the setting: hunger, disease, heat, and a worldview that expects supernatural punishment. In that context, the body becomes the loudspeaker for collective despair. Others have suggested poisoning, like ergot fungus on rye, which can cause hallucinations and convulsions. It's a tempting explanation, especially because bread is life in 1518. But ergot often causes severe pain, gangrene, and other symptoms that don't neatly match prolonged, coordinated dancing. The truth may be messy, a blend of stress, belief, social contagion, and physiology. And here's the uncomfortable lesson. Humans are imitative creatures. We catch moods the way we catch colds. Put enough frightened people together, give them a story that explains their fear, and bodies may start echoing that story. Strasbourg reveals something that still feels modern. Our minds are not sealed boxes. We are, in a very real way, connected nervous systems. In 1518, that connection danced. So why does this story still matter 5 centuries later, besides the fact that it's one of the strangest you have to be there moments in human history? Because Strasbourg's dancing mania is a mirror. It shows how a community reacts when the world stops making sense. First, stare, then explain, then act, sometimes disastrously, and finally rewrite the event into something survivable. It also reminds us that the boundary between mind and body is not a brick wall. Stress doesn't just live in thoughts. It can move into muscles, breath, heartbeat. In Strasbourg, suffering didn't merely speak, it performed. And there's a dark humour in the authorities' attempt to cure dancing with more dancing. It's the kind of mistake humans keep making, amplifying the very thing we fear, hoping volume will become control. When you hear about the dancers, feet bleeding, faces blank with effort, don't only ask, what was wrong with them? Ask, what was happening to their world? Because the scariest possibility is this. Under the right pressure, with the right story in the air, any society can start moving together without knowing who's leading. And that, more than the dancing itself, is what makes Strasbourg unforgettable.